Welcome back, everyone, to the T.R.O.N podcast. This is your host, Rashad Woods. Today, I have a very special guest out of Sarasota, Florida, a wellness coach, all-around good person, brings a lot of positive vibes and energies to the building and everyone she gets a chance to speak to. Karen Rudolph, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's such an honor to be here.
I really appreciate you carving out the time. You know, you have a very fascinating story. You really help people reach their maximum potential, unleash confidence, their real authenticity, and you've done this for a number of years. So please, how did you get into this field?
Oh, gosh, it's if I really go back, it started where I believe the kids were to be seen, not heard. I would ask a million questions, and my dad would say, "Go outside and play. You asked too much. Go away."
Yeah.
But subconsciously, as parents, we don't realize the impact, right? There's always a cause and effect.
Of course.
So the impact on me, what I made it mean was, I wasn't worthy because I wasn't getting my questions asked.
Mhm.
And then fast forward, I get into a realm of nursing and I start questioning the doctor. Gave me a script to send a patient home, discharge a patient. And I looked at it and I'm like, but you're not getting to the root cause. You're just masking the symptoms. And he blew me off and shut up and do your job. And if you don't do your job, there'll be other people.
Of course.
And then fast forward from that, my mom at age 72, I believe it was, took on painting classes and she had no one to share her paintings with. I was 2.5 hours away.
Yeah.
I had small little kids. I had like one here, one here. And I'd be on the phone going, Mom,
Yeah.
She was a hypochondriac, and that was her way. She had unworthy conversations and she felt like she wasn't enough. And by doing so, she ended up going to the doctor and saying, I have a migraine. And she would bring her paintings underneath her arm and she would show the nurses and they'd ooh and oh my God, that's beautiful. Da, 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 da.
Right.
And she'd go, come home with a prescription. And then 2 weeks later, she'd create a new artwork and call them up and say, well, the medication you gave me made me nauseous. And they would ooh and ah over paintings. And so it went. And it was probably, oh God, I remember one day I didn't hear from her. And I was like, something's off. She's always complaining about something.
Yeah.
And I call her up and she was slurring her words. And I stopped, got a sitter. And I went out, I dropped everything, went out to go see her. And she was laying on the floor in a fetal position. And I look up and there's 19 medications on her bedside.
Wow.
3 doctors not communicating together. And I went, the buck stops here, not on my watch.
Of course.
I've made it, and I shifted into more of a holistic perspective. And I've done many, neuroscience, quantum physics, all of these things.
Right.
To get to the root causes of a lot of what our ails are, because the body is always talking.
Right.
We don't.
Right. Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I can't tell you how many times, when you get a prescription, you get a medication, you don't even hesitate to just go to the drive-through, grab it, look at the diagnosis, and then, and then you're just taking it and you don't check the counter side effects. You're not looking at whether or not, it'll say little things like don't do well driving or, have XYZ amount per day. Things like that. But you don't actually really Google it, look it up and see what the side effects of it are on you or whether it's counteracting what you're taking. You're just taking it a la carte blanche and be like, okay, the doctor says take it, just take it. And it's not usually until there's an adverse effect that you start saying, hey, man, there's something funky with this thing. I took a medication one time that got me really nauseous one time. I actually ended up going to the hospital for it. So to your point, how much are you actually researching what you put into your body on a case-by-case basis, which probably led you to your next field of, your ultimate career.
Exactly. Because when you think about it, most people want relief. There's always, right? For every action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. Mm-hmm. That's physics, right?
Right.
So most people don't look at the cause and effect aspect of it. All they know is they want pain relief. They want instant gratification.
Correct.
That's what drugs and alcohol are all about.
100%.
So depending what your thing is, right, is going to depend on what the outcome is going to be. And there's always going to be an adverse reaction, especially most people don't consider if you're taking, like my mother, case in point, she was taking one drug for this something, and then she's taking this, but you're putting 2 chemicals together, there's going to be a reaction.
Absolutely.
Right? So when you put 19 of them together, combustion,
Yeah, I mean, worst case scenario is death, but that's the extreme to it, but unfortunately it doesn't really take much, it really doesn't. There's some really powerful medications that, I remember one time I had my teeth pulled and I took a Vicodin on an empty stomach.
Oh God.
Oh, it was.
Yes.
Oh, you want to talk about like, oh my gosh, it was. I mean, it was one of the
Yeah.
most painful experiences of my entire life. So you've had the fortunate distinction of overcoming, I believe, was it a horse riding accident? If my understanding.
It was a horse riding accident.
Oh my
Yes.
gosh.
I have horses. I'm not far
Yeah.
into it.
Okay. Okay.
Been around horses for years and years and years. But consider when you go to a foreign country, especially a third world country,
Yeah.
they do not take care of their animals the way we do.
Okay. Okay.
So this particular horse, I went down to Costa Rica after COVID. I decided I'm stuck in the house. I want to get out. I want to meet people. There was a retreat down there, and I'm like, I'm going.
For sure.
I don't speak Spanish,
Right.
but on there it said horseback riding, and I thought horseback riding
Thumbs
at
up.
sunset on the beach, man. I'm all over that one, right?
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite things to do.
Right.
That was like day 2. The horseback riding was day 2. Intuitively, and I am one that follows my intuition. I'm very intuitive. I utilize my intuition very greatly, depending on it for my business. And part of the Tranquil Solutions Clarity tool, which I created, is all about tapping into your intuition.
Right.
At any rate, I was down there in Costa Rica. My intuition told me, do not get on that horse. And I went to them. They were all getting ready to go. And I said, I don't feel right. I don't feel that I should be going. And they're like, no, you got to go. This is your thing. And we love you. You're the horseback rider in the group. And we really want you to come. And I'm like, no, I don't think I should be going. I allowed myself to be guilted into it.
Oh.
And I decided to go. And beautiful horse. He was probably one of the tallest horses in the group.
Oh my goodness.
Right? So I get on his back, and of course they're hacking, which is walking towards the beach the long way, right? When we get to the beach, they take off. My horse pulls back, and I'm like, what the heck? Like, come on, let's go.
Yes, yeah.
I'll take a couple of steps. But I'm very much the observer. What I noticed is as the waves were coming this way, he was moving this way away from the water. And I said, okay, I'm in the moment. I'm just going to relax and enjoy. I'll catch up with them.
Right.
Well, the guy comes back and he says to me, what's up? And I said, your horse has sore feet. And he says to me, oh, like nothing. He keeps throwing shoes. And I'm like, well, if you look at our nails, it's pure protein, like our hair.
Yeah.
And horse, the same thing. Right. So if you're ripping off a shoe, a metal shoe,
okay,
and the nail is pulling at it, and you put your hand in salt water, that's going to be really painful. Right. So the horse was avoiding the water, but he was like, why he was shod on sand anyway was beyond me, but I didn't question it. I just said, all right.
Yeah.
And so at any rate, we get up to the group and we're all sitting there talking and we're about to take off. And just as I'm about to lean back to go forward, a wave comes and hits his back edge. He goes spinning around to see what hit him. I went flying 6 feet in the air, landed on my butt. It wasn't.
Oh my goodness.
But I ended up snapping my femur and my left femur off.
In a foreign country.
In a foreign country, fractured my pelvis and dislocated my back. The surgeon spoke English. He was the only one that spoke English. It took me 2 hours to get there on bumpy roads and all. I was praying the whole time and I'm holding it for dear life. I mean, I thought,
oh my gosh,
it was painful. It was painful. But, it was such a learning experience for me because as I was there and I had gone through the surgery there, and as I said, I don't speak Spanish, all I kept thinking about was ways and means of coming home. But the doctor said to me, there's a chance you might not be walking again. And I'm thinking, here I am in a foreign country. And I just remember looking at him, taking a deep breath and saying, your diagnosis doesn't have to be my prognosis.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Again. And I remember, because I had all this time in my room by myself, I remember like constant affirmations, my body's healing every day in every way on a cellular level. My body's healing every day in every way, and I will be walking every day in every way on a cellular level, and I will be walking. And I get the chills just thinking about it. I remember looking out the window, and I'm very spiritual. Right? I'm not a religious person. I've studied world religion, and I landed on spirituality.
Right.
I remember looking out the window and seeing, to me, what was the mountain, and to them, it's a volcano. That I come from Florida; it's flat here, and I'm looking out the window and I'm saying, "Okay, God, how do I transverse this situation? I could only move like this much, my big toe on my right foot.
Oh my gosh.
And all I kept thinking is the faith of a mustard seed, faith of a mustard seed, faith of a mustard seed.
Yeah.
So instead of looking at the top of the mountain, I would look right in front of me, one little crawl up at a time, and I will get to the other side. And today I'm dancing.
Beautiful.
I'm not running any races, but I'm walking.
And that's okay. And that's okay.
You know what? I'm alive.
Exactly. And yeah, and not only that though, but I say this very respectfully. If you're going to teach it, then you have to actually walk the walk of what you teach. You know, you can't have, you didn't build the base of the people who, you know, ultimately listen to you and build the successful business that you have that we're going to talk about in a minute. And then when something happens to you that's adverse, you know, go into a shell and suddenly say, well, just because a doctor said this, that means that I have to live with whatever outcome that, you know, they told me, where you have decided that this is my will. I'm going to make sure I practice too long to have this scenario thrown in front of me to suddenly fold, so to speak.
Exactly. And I learned from my horse got struck by lightning. And he, because of his resilience and his fortitude for life, my vet told me, put him down. You know, you're going through a divorce. You have 3 kids. Yada, yada. It's cost you a fortune. And I remember getting still and going within, and my eyes opened, like, and it just like came out of my mouth. And I said, no, he's going to survive. And not only is he going to survive, but he and I are going to become catalysts for change.
Beautiful.
And before COVID, he and I were doing a lot of trauma clearing work together.
Wow.
Because people were calling him the miracle horse, because against all odds, he survived. So I learned a lot of lessons from things that are occurring around me, as well as what I'm feeling within me.
That's fantastic. So let's talk about Tranquil Solutions, right? So, you know, when you were in nursing and then you decided, you know what, I'm going to transition careers and take this field of work. And you have several certifications, and you're also a public speaker, and you do items in Canada as well, too, from my understanding. So let's talk about all those things, please.
Oh, gosh, where do I start?
Yeah. Hey, listen, that's
you know, it's almost embarrassing to say, because when I declared myself as a catalyst for change, right, in the beginning was the word. So word creates reality. So I started looking, and of course, that was around the time The Secret was coming out, or had come out, and it was all about manifestation. And I'm saying, what's missing from this? What's missing from this movie? This just doesn't feel right. And then what I've come to find through the years, it's aligned action. Right. I can sit there and think about it, but what am I doing? I mean, I was affirming that my body was going to heal and I was going to walk, but what am I going to do to align myself for what I want? Right. Which is in essence manifestation. And I was looking at things like that. And because I was on a spiritual journey, for me, everything is energy. So if everything is energy, what am I going to do? Cause and effect, right?
Right.
How am I going to respond to the situation rather than react to it in a way that's going to really forward momentum? So Tranquil Solutions was a download for me. It was right around the time that Truman, my horse, got struck by lightning. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to be that vessel and I am speaking life into being a healer and healing on a cellular level for others, who do I have to become in order to do that? And I got very involved. And at the time, I had no idea. I was going through a divorce. I had no idea why all of a sudden quantum physics became like the big, I couldn't get enough. I was starving for information.
Right.
Quantum physics, neuroscience, and as you said, I've got a lot of other things under my belt. But every single thing I did aligned with that future I was creating. And I hadn't realized it. And I've always been one of these people, as I said, I'm a little embarrassed to say this out loud, but I've always been one of these people that, you know, I have the horse and the cart, but I'm following the carrot, and I'm realizing my cart is getting really heavy.
Right.
And it was just, as a matter of fact, last week I was asked to do a movie. And
oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's aligning with, because of who I've become as a result of all of this, and I'll get to that in a second. They had asked me for all my, you know, my bio and all of the things that I've done and everything else. And I was like, ooh, like I stopped and I thought about it. I'm like, I'm not the most organized person in the world. I'm really good at what I do.
Right.
I'm organized for clients, but for myself, I'm not the most organized, right? So I was like, oh, that's going to take a hot minute for me to like find all that stuff to get it to you.
Yeah.
And what I was realizing is I was unpacking it. I was unpacking my cart to present it to this movie executive producer.
Wow. That's
and
amazing.
I'm like, I've done a lot of things, but I've never really stopped to celebrate and acknowledge it. It's just like, okay, what's
go,
next?
go, and
Right.
and move on to the next thing.
done 9 collaborative international best-selling books. I've done, you know,
Unbelievable.
TV shows. I've done speaking gigs. I've been a presenter globally. So part of what I presented globally, and this is what got me to where I am today, I always look for the missing. And when I was in
Okay.
South Africa, I'll never forget it. I was presenting, I had a deck of cards. And because I have a Jungian psychology background, right, it's like, again, you know, when I look at the mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual, when I say holistic, whenever I use the word holistic in print, it's always with a "do" in front of it. Because when I'm looking at clients, I'm looking at the whole of the client. I'm not looking at, oh, just you have a physical ail, or oh, you're having problems with relationship, oh, you're having problems with finances or career choices or purpose or whatever people are coming to me for. I'm looking at all of it because, like your body is always talking, your body is interconnected. So if I take it to the next level, right, body is internal.
Right.
If I take it to the next level, it's external. So what's happening in the external? So what I do is I became a mapper, and I've been mapping for, oh God, 34 years. I've been
Wow.
mapping for 34 years. So at any rate, when I map, when I get a client, I'll map it, and I'll see connections because it creates whole brain thinking. I'll see connections and I'll say, well, you're saying this, but have you looked at here? And they're like, oh no, I haven't. I'm like, well,
Right.
let's go exploring.
Well, think how often that, I always equate it with eating your own food, right? Like, how often do you say, I cook really well, and then you've never actually had anybody sample your food? Now, I'm a terrible cook, so I'll give myself for an example. Right? If it's not on the oven for like 20 minutes, don't ask me to make anything from scratch, right?
Right.
So, like, to your point, but like you get blinded by what you really are because nobody's ever actually assessed you, so to speak, right?
Right.
So,
Well, I mean, people bite every now and then. I mean, I get acknowledged all the time, but again, acknowledgement is part of giving and receiving. And
right.
if you're not good at receiving as a reformed people pleaser, I mean, I couldn't receive for, I could give, give, give. Yeah. Oh, I've got stories up the wazoo, but I remember during hurricane in Louisiana,
Katrina?
I decided to volunteer with I have 3 daughters, decided to volunteer with my daughters at one of the local churches where I was living. And they asked me to paint the floors and they asked my daughters to be in the kitchen. And I looked at them and I said, I don't mind volunteering. I have asthma. I'm not going to be painting floors. I'll do anything else.
Yeah.
Right? So spirit is really funny. It works in mysterious ways. So they put me in with a financial planner. The room was extremely small and crowded. It was, imagine this rectangular space, and everybody gets in and they're like crawling into their spaces around the room. And I'm the last one to get in. Lesson learned. A speaker will always, like, we read from books from left to right.
Yeah.
So he's out there with his finger and he's like all godly and everything else that he says to this group. Who in this group likes to give? And everybody's like, yeah, me, pick me, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yeah. And he literally leaps across the room into my face. Out of everybody's face, he's in my face going, you're robbing people of their joy. You're not allowing them to experience the same thing. And I went, ugh. And in that minute, I shifted like that.
Really?
So now when people contribute, it's like, thank you.
For sure.
I don't say anything else. But it was a lesson I had to learn to get me to where I am today. So I look at everything as an experience, as a lesson. Part of who we are becoming is as accumulation of the lessons learned, not just the experience, but the lessons learned.
Right. Without question. And I'm curious, when you are coaching your clients, and you're developing those personal relationships and people are opening up to you, what age demographic are they, or what's their situation they typically come from, and what is exactly like the steps of, hey, I don't know, if do you do some sort of personality test or something like that to try to get who they are to ultimately come to a solution of what they're looking for?
That's
I know
a loaded question.
It is. Okay, so the basic of it is,
let me say, basic of it is, I speak entrepreneurial women, right? I finally got to that point. Before it was like anyone and everyone.
Right.
And, my coaches will say, no, you got to niche it. No. And it's so ironic because I'll say entrepreneurial women who are going through overwhelm and they're feeling stuck or stopped, or, they're low energy or that sort of thing. Men show up all the time. So what am I going to do? Turn the men away? No, I enjoy that just as much as I do women. So I'm going to say it broadly, men as well as women. People get stuck. People
of course
get
they do.
stopped.
100%.
right? Especially when it comes to health and well-being, when it comes to finances, relationships, and health,
Right.
right? They're all interwoven. So I don't turn anybody away. Well, let me reframe that. I do turn people away because if they're not willing to want to do the work and it's going to be exhausting for me,
Of course.
say thank you very much.
We're not a good fit.
We're not a good fit.
Right.
Exactly. So I have done that in the past, but by and large, people who come to me are already in the place where they want that pain relief. They want that magic pill to pop, but the
Yeah.
magic pill isn't a pill in my case, right? It's
Yeah.
more, I create a magical space for them of safety, number one. We create a space where they want to do the work. They're curious to do the work because they
Absolutely.
know, I create that space of ease for them
Right.
because they want that personal freedom at the end. And what is it going to take? Yeah, is it going to take something? Absolutely. So after all these years of experience, I was listening. I was down in South Africa. I had gone for a conference, and it was a back-to-back an ACA conference, which is a creativity conference. And I was listening to I went to the business meeting first, and I was able to support the business people. And yet, when the teachers came in, my heart, and then again, I'm a mom, with kids of my own, my heart went out to the teachers because, well, number one, they had heard about my talk with the businessmen.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up getting like 56 people in my room, which were not just educators, but they were superintendents and all these people, directors and stuff, because they had heard what I was talking about. After I came back the second year, the first year I listened and I thought about it for the year, and I'm like, okay, there's a ways and means that they're not seeing that I'm going to support them in. I didn't know what it looked like, but I declared I was going to do that. And as a result of that, I changed the educational system in South Africa.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. That is incredible.
You never know who's listening. You never know who's watching, and you never know the impact you're going to have. I didn't go in there thinking I was going to have an impact. I just thought, when I'm going to come up with creative problem solving solutions. So in essence, I do a lot of creative problem solving. As a child, I loved manipulative puzzles. The flat ones bored the heck out of me.
Yeah.
So today, I look at my clients as a puzzle. Like, how are we going to put these pieces together and make it fit, So.
And I think there's something to be said when people are actually talking to a stranger who's qualified, because then, if you're talking to your inner circle, you can you already know me. There's nothing really to talk about. So, but then when you have a chance, hey, this is what you specialize in. And they're like, man, I really need to get this off my chest. And I'm so glad that I just had a chance to verbalize what because people lose their purpose, right? And, or even for me personally, this is just briefly, I always thought that I was in shape. I do martial arts. And then one day I saw a video of me doing martial arts. And I was like, who is that guy? I didn't realize that I was actually much larger than what I was because the video didn't lie. And then once there was there's nothing that could pretty that bad boy up, and here I was thinking I was feeling like, I'm in shape. And you're like, no, you are not. Right. And nobody spoke on it. I just saw it for myself. And then that became some changes when it came to dietary and actually nutrition wise. And then I started to actually feel much better. And I didn't it was completely awareness, 100% awareness.
Everything is awareness.
It was very humbling, very humbling.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's where I love awareness, because then you get to choose. It's always a choice.
Correct.
And then you decide from there what you're going to do about it.
Right.
And you don't do anything. It's still a choice. Right. So, cause and effect.
And I think the beauty about it, similar to your work, is the result. What you see is not going to lie to you. Right. So when you're sitting down and people are talking to you, and I'm not assuming about your field by any stretch of the imagination, but I would imagine is you're listening, right? They're talking, but you're taking notes. You're being very detailed about it. Now, my question is, are you doing these in person? Are you doing these over the web, Zoom calls? And do you have a staff?
I do have a staff. I am doing everything since COVID. I'm doing everything on Zoom now because it just makes it easier. I prefer the connections.
Yes.
But again, this next best thing is like this. I'm seeing you. I'm seeing your facial expressions. I'm seeing your energy. Even though it's not in front of me, I'm seeing it differently. I'm reading that energy, right? A good speaker will read the room, right? A good coach will read what's going on or not being said, kind of thing. And that's what led me to really create, after years of experience in taking that. I always said there's got to be a way to replace Karen. Because I want a life too. I'm number one.
Absolutely.
And number two, I want to leave some sort of I don't want to call it a legacy, but in a sense, it's a legacy. And I created the Tranquil Solutions Clarity Tool, which is, for me, a groundbreaking. It took me 15 years of research and development.
Wonderful.
We've been beta testing it for the last 2 months, and it's getting incredible reviews. I was doing that in person prior to digitalizing it. It's a self-guided experience that's designed to support individuals reconnect to their inner wisdom, shift their perspective, and create a more grounded knowingness or clarity.
Wonderful.
When it matters most, like decision making and such. So it's a subscription-based product. It's available now, and I'm getting so many amazing, like, oh my God, where were you? So it's like having me and my experience from 2007 to present in your back pocket 24/7 on any digital product.
That's wonderful. And I'd love to hear more about that too. And just briefly, because I know there's a lot to talk about. I am just so fascinated. What is the 5 ways to create a ripple? I saw the video about that, but I thought that was so fascinating, and I was like, okay, let's create a ripple. So and I was like, I got to find out. And so just explain detailed what that is.
Okay. That was my very first book.
Yeah.
Years ago. So let me briefly go back to it.
Yeah.
Number one was basically, and I'm going to brief it because I remember there were 5 steps and I listed all the steps, but right now I'm still waking up for me.
No, it's all good.
The first one is really awareness, is about awareness. The more aware you are, the more you have the power to choose.
Right.
And create a life for yourself or manifest what you want. The second phase is collaboration. I believe that we are not here to do life alone. So it's really learning to collaborate and ask. Knocking doors will open. You don't ask, you don't get. And I remember this movie producer said to me, Karen, if you don't ask, I'm not going to offer it. And I was like, do I want to be in the movie? Do I want to get up? Yeah. I'm like, okay, if I ask a question, he says, start with a broad question. Okay. And now I'm in the movie, sign the contract. So
unbelievable.
You never know what's going to come with collaboration, right?
Fantastic.
So collaboration, taking bold actions, and these are out of order, taking bold, aligned action steps, right? So let me go back a second. The third one was pretty much like building confidence. And, like anything else, is a learned skill. We're not born with confidence. So you learn to drive a car.
You do.
You got in, and the first time you went, you were like this, what do I do first?
And listen, and listen, in Michigan, there's not a lot of transportation, right? So just briefly, when you talk about a car, I don't want to take away from 5 ways, of the ripple. I remember when I had an internship in Chicago, and it was all subway systems and everything like that. And there were a lot of people that were from Philadelphia, from Baltimore, people who had that system, and they got there and they knew exactly what to do. And I stood there like, what is this? They were like, and everybody looked at me. They're like, you don't have this in Detroit? I said, absolutely not. I said, I know nothing about this. It was like embarrassing. I was like, what is the subway system? I said, I don't even know how to walk up to a counter and ask for a ticket. I don't know what connects. Nothing. It was pretty humbling, actually. You realize that your world and your zip code can be your oyster, and it's not.
Exactly. And to your point, most people will make themselves bad and wrong for not knowing.
Oh, for sure.
Right? We didn't know how to do math. We didn't know how to do, I don't know. I'm not a rocket scientist. I don't know how to do history or anything like that. All right. I don't know how to do your job. You don't know how to do mine. And that's what makes us all unique. But again, it's giving ourselves grace.
Right.
Right? Taking bold action steps, bold aligned action steps. It's really deciding what you want, going out, declaring it, going after what you want, because word is powerful. Word creates. I think it was my Essence of a Woman. I can't even remember which book it was in. Essence of a Woman book, I believe it was, that got me on the NASDAQ billboard.
That's amazing.
And talk about words as medicine. Words create your reality. Words create what you want to manifest. Cadabra, right? So what you're speaking out into existence, if you say you're stupid or you say you're not enough, your brain is listening to that.
Absolutely, it is.
And it's going to create more of the same until you choose to change it. So, I'm a big advocate on words. Am I perfect at it? Absolutely not. I'm a school of hard knocks kid, but I learned my lessons.
Well, the big thing, and for me, one of the reasons I created this podcast, I'm so glad you reached out to me, is because the one thing, I'm a self-professed geek, right? I really, truly am. I watch documentaries. I've told other guests this. I said, if you ever saw me at a barbecue or, at after hours, what do they call it? wine or something at a bar, right, where people are just kicking it. I'm going to talk like, yeah, I'll know sports a little bit, and I follow, casually, but I just know geek stuff. So if somebody's like, did you watch that documentary? Did you watch, the History Channel? I watched a 10-part series one time on world dictators around the world, during World War II and World War One. Don't ask me why, but stuff like that just fascinates me. Like, I'll listen to anything that involves like fascinating facts. I always try to understand things, if only just for my own personal curiosity. And I think it's important to not lose your curiosity as you get older, because as a kid, you're always curious and you're always asking questions. But then when you become an adult, being curious and asking questions kind of like, oh man, I shouldn't do that, right? It becomes kind of embarrassing. You get kind of self-conscious about asking questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But that's where I think with age comes wisdom as well. And you get to a point where you can be curious without feeling guilty anymore. You tend to speak more. We tend to speak. I'm young. You are. We tend to. It's really letting go and surrendering. And the more I surrender, I used to be in this space of lack because that was my mom's conversation. And I finally said, of course she's passed on. And it's like, Mom, that's your conversation. Thank you for sharing it. It did me well but I don't need it anymore. I'm releasing it with love. Okay? And by doing that, you're releasing all these things that have been holding you back, and you're holding on to what really serves you. And most people don't even know whose conversation was it anyway. And when you stop and you pause and you get still and you listen or you do the work, you'll realize that we take on so many other people's stuff.
We do.
That doesn't serve us.
And listen, you're not entitled to do it either. They're not entitled. People who get in your head and your space, you let them in it, right? So just briefly, where can people find you? You've obviously been, you're successful long before you talk to me. You're going to be successful long after you talk to me. But just for the purpose of this show, where can people find Karen Rudolph and the services she offered and the wonderful things that you do for people?
Thank you. Well, the best place to get a hold of me is Karen Rudolph, Rudolf. Everybody spells that one wrong, especially around Christmas time. And my company name is Tranquil Solutions.
I saw that when I was typing the email. I was like, wait a minute, I think I typed that wrong.
Tranquil Solutions is TranquilSolutions.com. And if you go there, I have a gift for you. Be happy to give that to your listening audience, and a way to get there's a link there for the clarity tool as well, if anybody's interested in that. A whole thing about me, and actually my team is in the process of updating and revamping my website. So
wonderful.
Hopefully it'll look pretty good by the time you get there.
Yeah, I was impressed with what I saw. So, you built a wonderful company. You travel, from Africa to up to Canada, and I'm sure 30 minutes doesn't do justice to all the things that you've actually accomplished and will continue to accomplish. But the T.R.O.N podcast is all about reaching out to people like yourself and picking their brains and being able to inspire others and realize that, I know it sounds like a cliche, more people think like you than don't. And when you find people that find their purpose and find their better versions of themselves.
Right. Exactly.
I got to tell you, this has been a blast.
Well, thank you. Yep. Myself as well. I'm so grateful.
And I'm jealous. I'm jealous of what looks like great weather outside too.
It's beautiful here.
Yeah.
It's getting warmer though, but it's beautiful.
I've been in there in June and July, and it's a tough one. So thank you so much, Karen Rudolph, and I wish you all the best. And I'm so glad you took the time out to talk to me.
Thank you, Rashad. Such a pleasure.
Awesome. Have a good one.
You too.